So I'm finally back from the Montreal trip, and you have no idea how glad I am to be able to say that. Montreal was something else, something incredible, something like just unbelievable happened during the Montreal trip. Something devastating. But I guess to make all sense of this whole story, we would have to go back a few weeks, or a week back before the Montreal trip. So before a week ago, I had to actually let go of my dog, my 17-year-old dog. Obviously, he was more than a dog to me. He was my brother, he was my son, he was my everything. And letting him go, there's no words to describe the pain and the sorrow. There's really words are wasted. There's really no word in the dictionary to describe what I felt. And so I was obviously in a very dark place in my life, in my mind, but I was not trying to self-pity myself or make the situation worse by staying in bed. So I wanted to do something that I enjoy, that I love, and that was hi-fi. And at the same time, Motet Distributions offered a sponsorship, a fully paid vacation to the Montreal show. So thank you for that, by the way, Lily. Very kind of you, Motet Distributions. They carry AccuPhase, PMC, and so on. But they were extremely kind to me. But we'll get into that a little bit later on. So back to the story. 7 hours of driving from Toronto to Montreal. I take my boy Tujin, and we packed our audio gear. And at the same time, as coincidence would have it, Darren, my Patreon, sells his Kinky Studio monoblock and preamplifier to a person in Montreal. So it made perfect sense for me to take these items and give it to the person who bought it, the buyer, at the Montreal Audio Fest, since his friend was going to be there at the Audio Fest anyways. So I have the Kinky Studio monoblocks and the preamplifiers in boxes, in their original boxes, in my car, and thousands worth of camera gear in my car as well. And so we drive 7 hours to Montreal, and then within an hour of arriving to the Audio Fest, we got robbed. Yep. Most of the items, and I'm guessing this was an organized crime because there's no way one person would carry all this. At least 3 people, I'm assuming, at least 3 people were able to get into my car and take whatever they could grab. And that included the Kinky Studio, monoblocks, the preamplifier that was in the boxes, many of my camera bags with, $1,000 lapel microphone, preamplifier, mixer, all sorts, light power supply, all of that stuff. So all in all, kind of hard to assess the damage, but the total damage in total amounts to about anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. So yeah, that's what happened. You could imagine the shock that we were going through. I mean, laughing, I'm obviously not laughing. The laughing is not laughing, as you can probably tell. At that night, I was going through a mental breakdown. Like, I was going hysterical, quite frankly. And I've learned something very valuable, and that's kind of what I want to share in this video. I mean, we're living in a pretty tough, challenging decade, and I see a lot of stuff changing around the world. Obviously, news and all that, COVID, the war, but I feel like even in the micro level of just, taking a business trip, these things are happening more frequently and often, and I don't think I'm the only one. And that's kind of scary to think about it that way. But also, I just think that I'm having some terrible luck these days because in Toronto, actually a few hours back from actually making of this video, I was quite scary. I was mugged at gunpoint. Yep. So I was trying to sell a lens, which would recoup some of the money from all the losses recently. So I was excited to sell the lens and met someone at a public space that I would never imagine, this to happen. And a very normal person pulled out a gun on me and asked me to hand over the merchandise, the lens. And so that happened. But at this point, it really doesn't matter. What really matters is the fact that these things are happening and there's a lesson to be learned. For one, I'm really thankful for the kindness, because kindness always prevails. You know, as cringy as that sounds, it's true. And when it comes to these situations, I feel like that is so valuable. Like Darren, for example, I have to really thank him because he took a loss as well. He trusted me with transferring his expensive monoblock and preamplifier to the seller. Yet, you know, I was not able to because I got, you know, basically robbed. And in this situation, you know, instead of freaking out, which I'm sure he was behind the phone, he texted me that, you know, don't worry, keep doing what you do, you know, make the show happen, make the best of it. Don't let this drag you down, and we'll figure this out later. Don't make this a problem for you. And for someone who just took a loss that is just a substantial amount, if you think about the Kinky Studio monoblocks and the preamplifier, that is not a small loss at all. And for someone who did, you know, just lose that, he literally was such a kind person to me to text me that, to assure me that. You know, he could have easily been like, oh, you fucked up, you fucking retard, you know, give me my money back. But he didn't do that. And also, Lily from Motet Distributions, when I texted her of what happened, you know, telling her that I may not be able to film for the Audio Fest, what I came for in the first place, what she sponsored for in the first place, she gladly, you know, texted me saying that, you know, she will help in every way she can. She was willing to compensate me for whatever she can. And I said, hey, Lily, this is not your fault. It's not your fault that I got robbed. You shouldn't be paying out of your pocket to pay for my, you know, my downfall, essentially, my robbed ass. So, but people around me, you know, comforted me and, you know, was willing to help. And these were people that were also affected by the robbery. You see, I wasn't the only one that was affected by the robbery as well. And Tujin, the man who, you know, who's often behind the camera, and the guy who I traveled with, he said one thing that night, and both of us didn't sleep at all that night. Maybe 3 hours of like half asleep, you know, on and off, because there's no way you can sleep after something like that. You know, you just don't feel safe. But he said something when I was going hysterical that I kept repeating over and over again during the night when I couldn't sleep. It's not about what happened to you, but how you make of the situation. And you know, I don't give Tujin a lot of credit, but sometimes he says some really smart stuff, and this was that one instance. I kept repeating this phrase over and over again during the night. I was having a mini panic attack during the night, and I couldn't breathe, I couldn't speak, and I kept repeating this in my head, and it really did help me out. And the next morning, we both woke up really early. Actually, the first thing we did was check if our car was still there, because that's the last thing we need stolen. And since we still had our camera, because we did take our camera with us into the show, we still had our camera, the physical body. So thankfully, we still had the camera. So we ran down to the police station, filed the police report, and then ran straight down to the camera store to pick up whatever we needed to start filming and be back in action right away. And we started filming right away. I mean, we hit every room, we listened to every room to give the best content possible for you guys. So those are coming up. So it was not wasted. Our trip was not wasted. And to make best of the situation is, in a situation like that, I know people say make best of the situation, but it's easier said than done. And seriously, it's easier said than done. I mean, I put my dog down a week ago. I was already in a very dark mindset, and then this thing hit me again. This was supposed to be my vacation. This was supposed to be my happy place, but it turned out to be a nightmare of logistics, of money, of, you know, just tragedy. It sucked for everyone. But nevertheless, we made it happen. So we have some amazing coverages from the show coming up, and some amazing, you know, opinions, amazing people interviews. But yeah, I mean, I just want to send that message to you guys. I mean, look, these things happen, And when they happen, a lot of what ifs come up. And I mean like stuff like, what if we didn't park there? What if we didn't go to Montreal in the first place? What if? You know, but it also works the other way. I mean, I'm so glad that I didn't take my one wheel that I usually take to Montreal. I'm so glad that, we didn't lose our camera, right? That would have been the end. So there's a lot of stuff that we should be thankful for in these situations, but we fail to see them, and it's really hard to see them when you're in such a dark mindset. But also when things really turn for the worse in life, like, this is very close to bankruptcy, like these are not camera gear that I bought all in one day. These are stuff that I collected over the years, and they're now all gone at one time. So, $200 batteries, $500 batteries, memory cards, these are all stuff that I collected over the years, microphones, they're all gone. Yet, I am still able to film now, ain't I? And so that's something to be thankful for. So I guess the message I'm trying to send is, there's no comparison to my tragedy and stuff that happened in my life and comparing it with something like that's happening in Ukraine right now. But I have a Patreon who's been really suffering because all his hi-fi stuff has been basically destroyed during the Ukraine, war against Russia. So, stuff like that. There's a lot of shitty stuff happening right now in our world that we live in. But when these things happen, I guess the message I want to really send is try to look for the positives, even if it's small. And just remember, just like our wise Tujin said, it is not what happened to you, it is what you make of the situation. Because it's either that or you just be devastated. And from devastation, there is nothing that can grow, there is nothing that can come out of it. But it's really hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's really hard to pick the good side and go through, the good side, especially when you haven't slept. Your dog just passed away, your camera gear that you collected over the years just got all stolen. These are all stuff that, honestly, my friend said, you have the right to cry right now. You have the right to have a mental breakdown. But if I did and I didn't go to the show, or if I didn't continue my trip, then I wouldn't have been able to do the show coverage and make the good films that I will be posting on this channel very soon, which I'll be very proud to do. It's something that, even small as hi-fi, right? Just something that you create, something that you spark in the world, in these situations, in these bad situations, right? Is what makes things great and what pushes us forward. And I guess that's a bit cringy, but really, I can't say it in any different way. It's like that grass growing in a place where it can't grow. It's not so amazing when you see a grass grow where it's supposed to grow, but it is amazing and it is a miracle when you see a grass grow somewhere that it shouldn't be growing, that it can't survive, but yet you see it growing. And I think that's what makes it great. I think that's what makes creation, whether it be YouTube videos for hi-fi, as insignificant to someone else, maybe significant to me, right? Is what made me push forward. And when I look back at these videos, I will know that and I'll remember that. And this was a valuable lesson that was really can't be marked, can't be marked with a price. So yeah. So I hope this video was helpful to you, even though it was not really related to hi-fi, but it was definitely related to hi-fi stealing or stolen hi-fi gear. Anyways, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.